Good day, Warren County. We're going to make this a terrific Tuesday despite the challenges that we face each and every day here in Warren County. As we face this crisis, the information that we share from experts is more important than ever in order for us to face the tasks at hand. With schools ready to reopen on August 12th, and so many parents facing the choice of whether to send their children back to school and what's best for each and every child, I'm pleased today to welcome to our broadcast Tennessee Commissioner of Education, Dr. Penny Schwinn. Dr. Schwinn is a career educator. Like me, she taught history and economics for several years before accepting positions in Texas and California as deputy commissioners and assistant superintendents of several state and municipal school districts. She also helped to found the Capital Collegiate Academy, which championed education reform and expanded many choices to include charter schools and career readiness. The commissioner received her BA from the University of California at Berkeley, a master's degree from Johns Hopkins, a PhD from Claremont Graduate University in California in policy education. Dr. Schwinn was appointed Commissioner of Education by Governor Bill Lee in early 2019. We welcome today Commissioner Penny Schwinn to our program. Dr. Schwinn, we welcome you today. And you might want to give us a brief statement about the general nature of schools and the reopening that we're having across the state. Some schools have already reopened, and we'll be starting a new calendar year here in McMinnville and Warren County on August 12th. So any updates you can give us or any words of encouragement or anything that explains the governor's new executive orders, we would appreciate it.
Sure. So thank you for having me today, and happy Tuesday. So I think we are in the throes of back to school and recognize that every district's doing something a little bit different, want to be able to support those local decisions as much as possible. When we're thinking about back to school and some of the decisions we're seeing across the state, what we're seeing is about 93% of our districts are going to open with some in-person option. 7% are opening remote only, and almost all districts have an online option for parents to choose based on personal preference, health considerations, etc. So we're seeing that hold pretty steady. There've been a few districts, a number of districts who have set their start dates back a little bit to give them a little bit more time to prepare, because we know that this is unlike anything we've ever experienced before. Some of the things going into the new year is, every district submitted a continuous learning plan to define what remote instruction would look like, and so we are in the process of reviewing and approving those, which has been wonderful to see all of the creativity that's gone into how our districts are thinking about educating children. And then the governor has announced quite a bit of funding to be directed towards education from the federal stimulus. The most recent was the $77 million in teacher kits that he announced last week. And those kits, there's a couple things. We delivered the first batch of them yesterday at Obion County High School. And what's going to be important about that is teachers will get kind of this initial box, and then there will be a point person at every school to reorder throughout the year. I think some folks expected a whole year of supplies to enter into their classroom, but there just isn't space for that, and the delivery chain doesn't work that way. So every school will have the opportunity to continue to reorder throughout the year to make sure that teachers remain fully stocked in those critical things like disinfecting wipes and hand sanitizer and masks and gloves. And so that was $77 million he pulled out of the federal relief, which was great. And we'll continue to, I think, invest in schools as they think about reopening. We also know that at the local level, these decisions and how any federal stimulus money is spent do remain local decisions. I think the governor very appropriately wants to make sure that the folks who know their communities best are empowered to make those decisions, and the state certainly will be in a position to support those decisions, whatever they are. The most recent executive order, I think, to round out is does really strongly encourage the use of masks for middle school and up, as well as for adults, and I think that's why those have been provided. We do know it mitigates virus spread if we're bringing folks back, and we also know that as districts are thinking about local policies, the state stands ready to support, and anything related to health is really coming out of the Department of Health. But I think I haven't gotten to be in schools for months now, and it's terribly difficult. It's the best part of the job is getting to be in classrooms and see teachers with their children, and the learning that takes place. And so it was really wonderful to have some time to talk with teachers yesterday and start to see schools open up. I plan to be in schools regularly over the next few months, as I have been, frankly, since I started. But being in classrooms, kind of trying to rally everyone, encourage that this year is going to be more challenging for sure, but I think that it can also be made to be much more special and a year unlike any other. And I think my two girls started school today, and they were just as happy this year as my older daughter was when she started second grade last year. So I think I applaud the work that's been done throughout the state and think that we will continue to demonstrate a national example of what's possible when people keep really positive attitudes, are willing to dig in and do the hard work as Tennessee has continued to show year after year. But I know y'all have a number of questions, and I'm happy to answer any of those as well. But just very appreciative to the leadership that's being shown at our local level in partnership with our state agencies.
We appreciate your leadership as well. I sent a couple of questions ahead of this broadcast. One of them, which is had a question that several teachers have addressed to me, is with these hybrid plans and possibly going online, what effect is it going to have on standardized testing, school systems report cards, and teacher evaluations during this next year?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's something that's come up on a number of levels. And so most recently, and then I can talk about the governors, because I'll actually start with that. So the governor made a comment on our state testing and on accountability last week, and I think it's something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. But in essence, what we know is that everyone wants to know how our kids are doing. So I think the first step is we need to separate assessment and accountability. So if we're just talking about assessment and just knowing where there are learning gaps, what learning loss we need to start thinking about and then planning for, and then frankly starting to cover those achievement gaps that exist, how important it is to know how our children are doing. I think those are shared values that we have across the state. Everyone wants to know how our kids are doing so we can make sure that our children continue to grow and accelerate. So the state's maintaining a commitment to having that level of information so that we can, on a statewide level, understand what's happening with student achievement and growth, especially now when we know that the impacts of COVID in the spring, that those were significant for many students. Now, a conversation about accountability and evaluation and that piece of it, we're separating that from assessment, because assessment is just about knowing where kids are and how they're doing. We think there are some really important conversations that will happen throughout the fall related to accountability and teacher evaluation, but those absolutely need to include our state legislature because it is in state statute. It also, for some of those conversations, requires a federal waiver. And right now the indications that we are getting is that everyone's focused on school reopening, as the Department of Education is, and those conversations will need to be pushed to when it's a more appropriate time, because right now we have to make sure that schools get open really well. What we're also seeing at the national level is we talk about NAEP a lot here in Tennessee, so that governing board that makes decisions about that national test. They actually voted yesterday, and they are continuing with assessment. So we're seeing some signals at the federal level that from an assessment perspective, everyone is continuing to be committed to monitoring and seeing how kids grow. But I do think that accountability conversation is a ripe one for us to have here in the state, and will likely happen sometime, as I said, in the mid-fall.
Thank you. I've got a lot of high school kids that are worried about ACT scores and college entrance exams, particularly with the great unknowns during the school year. So how do you see that affecting the overall ACT scores across the state with this pandemic at hand?
Yeah, so, we are looking at that, not, looking at certainly the scores, but also the opportunities to take the ACT itself. We know that with the spring closures, many students actually didn't get to take the ACT, and then when there were retake opportunities because of social distancing requirements, there weren't enough seats. So we have a serious issue in the state around making sure that any child who wants to take the ACT actually has the opportunity to do so. So we're working very closely with them to be able to offer more essentially seatings for the test so that students can take that. in state, and we're seeing this in a lot of parts of the country, a lot of higher education institutions are actually waiving ACT requirements for college entrance for this year because they know that there's been a shortage in availability to actually take the assessment. And so we are encouraging that as much as possible because we know that not all of our kids are getting the same access to take the test. We do also expect that there is going to be some decline in terms of performance on the ACT. Most of our students did not have regular instruction in the spring. That does impact their ability to kind of demonstrate knowledge that they might have otherwise had, even those ACT prep programs that many schools offer. And so what we're trying to do is work closely with our higher ed partners, especially in state, to take that into account. And we're seeing in Tennessee that most of our colleges are either waiving that requirement or taking into account that they should see some slight decline in test scores for this year.
Okay, thank you. I know the General Assembly, the governor has called a special session beginning next week. And I know one of the topics is supposed to be about general liability to counties and school systems. Have you got any comments on where we lie right now for local education groups and school districts about the liability connected with the COVID cases?
Yeah, I don't have much because I know that's one of the reasons they want to take it up. I think there are, and you can imagine, we're seeing, 6 different ways of reading any kind of existing statute. What we do know is that currently teachers themselves and existing state statute have liability coverage. So that's actually something very unique. Not every state carries that, but in Tennessee, teachers themselves have that as part of their profession, and that's been in statute. So I think what they're trying to look at now is what is that liability coverage for at the district level for principals or for other folks who are in a very different situation or at the organizational level. I do expect that they will pass something. That special session should run August 10th, and I think they're thinking August 10th to 12th or 13th. And that's where they'll really get into some of that liability coverage at the district and school level. But the other thing that we know that people are talking about and thinking about is even just, sick days and what are the expectations and requirements around that. And those are things that, again, while they are local policies and have always been local policies, the state will likely provide greater guidance around how to think about what it means if you are quarantined but not actually ill or showing symptoms versus if you are very ill, and how to code that to make sure that people who are taking reasonable precautions in their employment are able to have some coverage, especially kind of given some uncertainty in these times.
Thank you. One question that's come up, and I've addressed this with our local director of schools, who will be joining us here shortly for some questions as well. But with so many hot spots in the rural communities and schools going back into session, would you recommend that all teachers be tested before they enter back into the classroom?
That's a great question, and it's actually something we talked a lot about at the state level around do we make that a requirement? Is that something that we offer as a service? So one of the things is, there's lots of testing sites across the state. If local districts would like to make that as a policy, one thing that it does is that it does allow for, on the first day of school, to be able to at least keep folks who might be positive out of the school building. So, anyone who's actually entering on that first day of school is COVID negative. What that allows is it does allow for folks to be able to know, anyone who's coming in this point of time, this is where we're at. And as long as you continue to take precautions within the school, you should not contract COVID at the school. But again, that's if you take all the precautions, the likelihood of that goes down dramatically. But it is just a point in time. And so that's the other side of it is, folks, and we're seeing this, like, you'll see people who, absolutely do not want to go back to school, but then are, in backyard barbecues or at the beach without masks on, interacting. And so it's a little bit, it's a 24-hour commitment that we would be asking for our schools and communities. If we're going to go back, then we all kind of have to do our part in terms of how we're thinking about interacting. And so that testing before the first day of school does get you that point in time, but it doesn't continue to be negative unless some of the other precautions are taken regularly. So it'll be open. We will offer that. It will continue to be a service, but those decisions will need to be made at the local level.
Thank you. One of the questions also that we've had, I know you're big on career readiness. We've got, we've received a $1 million grant for CTE partnership with our local TCAT, and we have many students already that are doing dual enrollment and are signed up for our mechatronics and robotics programs here in Warren County. If we go to online instruction only, how is that going to affect those classes, receiving credits for them? How do we move forward with instruction with those kind of challenges ahead of us?
Yeah, and so that's going to be one of the more challenging pieces of it. If we're going to remote instruction, we are currently trying to look at online options that might be available for students who are in some of, especially in those trade pathways. But if they are not allowed or able to go physically in school, unless the district has adopted individual online courses with some kind of interactive feature, it's going to be very difficult for students to be able to continue on those pathways at the same rate that they otherwise would have. Like I said, we're trying to work very, very quickly with state procurement processes and within the bounds of those to be able to offer at least a statewide contract that districts could use to offer some of those really critical programs in an online platform, especially when that's not offered or isn't able to be offered at the local level. So we're working very aggressively towards that. One of my biggest worries, I think, when I think about kind of the futures of our children, is that those students who were on these really productive pathways towards careers that they were excited about and are excited about and absolutely want to do, that they will have a pretty significant delay in being able to attain the necessary credentials or certifications to be able to move into their employment post-high school. So we're moving quickly to address that. But it is something where we're trying to encourage some flexibility. Even if districts or programs are remote, are there opportunities to allow certain classes to go back in smaller group settings to be able to still demonstrate some of that, especially in those skill-based professions. So that's what we're trying to work with individual programs on.
Thank you. One question that's come up continuously, and particularly in our system, which is going to be on a hybrid every other day, childcare is critical to a lot of parents who are trying to go back to work, and then being able to afford childcare for 5 days when your child's only going to be there maybe 2 or 3 days, or reserving a spot, or where you've got multiple children alternating on days. Any ideas on childcare? Any suggestions on how we should handle it locally?
Yeah, so to be honest, I think that is one of the biggest challenges. I'm in the same boat, if that makes me don't feel any better. So, what we're seeing is that child care centers, like, they're either going through continuous closures themselves, or they aren't opening back up at all. They're just they're waiting. And we're seeing that with our pre-K and preschool programs as well. What that does is it does have that domino effect, and that's part of the component of school and childcare, is when there isn't a place for young children to go, as you all know, and parents are unable to work from home. Now they're making choices between, like, how do I take care of my family, and then who takes care of my kids? And that is an impossible choice for many families. It's one of the number one calls or emails that we get, is just help me understand how do I do both when they're conflicting with one another. I want to go to work, I want to be financially independent, but I don't have a place for my kids. What we're expecting, we're hoping, is that the federal government should be passing another stimulus bill. We're hoping as quickly as possible, and a portion of that should be allocated towards child care programs to help either get them back on their feet or hire more staff so that they can have fewer kids in the classroom. Until they do that, though, and at the local level, what we're encouraging is working, and we're doing this in the state agencies, but working with local community organizations, churches, YMCAs, libraries, and what we're seeing is that if you have enough parents who come together with like 1 or 2 child care providers, that they're actually able to rotate, everyone kind of take a day or a half day if you've got 10 parents. That allows them to at least start to get back to work and create these pods of child care that they're doing with one another. But it is, you are committing, if let's say you have 10 parents and you have 1 child care person as opposed to maybe the 5 who would normally have been taking care of children, you are committing to kind of all helping together. But we're seeing a lot of those pop up across the state. Again, like I said, in YMCA's or libraries or things like that. And so if there isn't childcare, that's one of the options that we're seeing people do, these kind of community childcare pods.
Thank you. I'm gonna bring Grant Swallows to the podium. He may have a couple of questions. He's our new director of schools, so he has done a phenomenal job, and I know you've met him. So I'm gonna bring Grant to the podium to ask a couple of questions.
Grant is wonderful, so y'all are very lucky.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to first of all thank you for being here. I know your work is exhaustive, and I appreciate very much the fact that you've taken time to share with us. I actually am not going to give you any questions. You've done a great job of answering those. I'd love for you to talk to a couple of groups, and first to our teachers. We continue to see them excited about the opportunity to come back to work and be around their students, but they're also concerned for their health. So if you would, just take a minute to talk to our teachers about what your encouragement for them is and what they're going to face here in just a week.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. You give me the chance to do that. So, I'll start by saying, I still consider myself an educator, but more importantly, I come from a family of teachers, and so you can imagine when we're on our family Zoom calls with my aunts and my uncles and my sister and my mom, and my cousins now, who are all teachers and marrying teachers. This is the number one thing that we're talking about as a family. What does it mean to go back? And how everyone desperately wants to see their students and have, I think, those same feelings that we all have and share, especially in the beginning of school. There's nothing like it, and if you haven't been an educator, it's so hard to explain, especially those first few days. They're like magic every year. And there's also some real reason to have concerns. We care about our own health. We care about the health of our loved ones, and balancing both of those things can be difficult. What I will say, though, is I am very, very encouraged by the things that I am seeing and hearing from teachers across the state. I think number one is take care of yourselves. Make sure that you are using all the appropriate and precautionary and taking those steps. Use the materials that are being sent. I know your district is providing you with materials, and really thinking through how you set up your classroom to keep everyone safe and healthy. But I think on top of that, the thing that we're not talking enough about when we talk about our teachers, and what I want to say to them, is that this is what they are doing, what our educators are doing every day. It is a complete act of love and service. These are folks who love and care about their students in the same way that they love and care for their own children. They are keeping and are one of the foundational elements of our entire state and how we keep our communities afloat and thriving. And the way in which I've seen so many of them respond and approach that with enthusiasm and joy and excitement, I think that radiates with our kids. And our kids desperately need to see folks who have that confidence and that same love and welcoming environment that they're used to. And so I would say to them, thank you for what they're doing. It is incredibly needed. It is incredibly, incredibly important. And there is a ton of gratitude across the state for what they're doing. Hang in there. It's not going to be the same this year. The teaching is not going to feel the same. There are going to be things that are different, but it is a year that will be incredibly special to our students because they are going to see adults who, even when there's anxiety in the greater community, that adult, that teacher who they count on every single day is still there for them, and that kind of continuity is incredibly important for students. And so I would say hang on to that, take the appropriate steps to keep yourself safe, and just lean into a different, but what will be a very, very good year. And I expect to see a lot of them. I'm going to be touring around in classrooms. I think that it's important if our teachers are going back that I'm in there with them. So I hope to see some of them as soon as possible after your schools open up.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that encouragement. You've been a great encourager to our group of superintendents, and 2 months into this job, I just want to thank you for that. One of the things I appreciate you mentioning is the fact that your children went back, I believe you said today. One of the things that I continue to say to our teachers and to anybody that will listen is that while we're facing great challenges and we are concerned about all that's in front of us, one of the great positives is that we have students that want to come back to school and are excited to come back to school. And what a gift that is to us as educators, to have students that want to be here and be involved and be at school because they've had it taken away from them. And we know as school districts and educators that we provide so much more than just an education. We provide lots of things. And one of the initiatives of your department is educating the whole child. What should we focus on this year? What are some of the initiatives of that department that are going to help us focus on educating the whole child throughout a challenging school year?
Oh, I love that. And you know that's near and dear to my heart. So I think that now more than ever, we know that whole child work is some of the most important things that we can do, especially when we've had school building closures for so long. One of the things I would mention is we have the statewide Child Wellbeing Task Force, and they put out a report, kind of a look back. What they will put out, it looks like either late this week or early next week, is essentially a protocol that local communities can use to start to work with families, nonprofits, et cetera, around the wraparound services that can happen for students, especially those who've been out of school for so long. Vanderbilt just put out a study maybe it was a week and a half ago, that talked about things like we expect to see a pretty significant spike in behavioral health and mental health challenges for students, and that's just because those routines have been out of practice for a while. And so we were encouraging folks to use this framework for child well-being. The governor will likely announce either this Thursday or next Thursday some significant financial support for local communities to be able to implement some of these best practices. And then I think some of the other things that we can just do together is we'll be building some online tools for free resources for districts. We are going to be supporting nutrition services so kids can stay fed. And then we're trying to work with local health departments around what could a beginning of school year, whole child checkup look like, so that families and teachers alike can understand these are the needs of students, especially those who are the most vulnerable. So I think the governor has that slated for a week from Thursday to talk about, but we will continue to push the work in this Child Wellbeing Task Force, which is statewide, around different resources we can drive to schools. And if this new federal stimulus comes in, that is going to be one of the primary areas of focus from the department, is just how do we continue to support districts and give them resources to do the love work, the heart work, not just the brain work.
That's great. I will finish with just one question. You mentioned the classroom kits, and we got instructions from your office yesterday to how to do that. Can you just maybe give us an update on how quickly those items are going to be available to us in the local districts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the department did the pitch on how much money and all the resources. So I never shy to ask for more resources for schools. And TEMA is responsible with FedEx doing the shipment. So they basically prioritize based on district reopening dates. So the first shipment is actually pretty light because everyone's starting pretty close together. So we're just trying to get everybody something to start the year. And then what will happen, it's essentially 100 gloves. It is 100 to 150 wipes, a big thing of hand sanitizer, and a month's supply of masks. And that's kind of that first box that teachers will get. What will happen after that is, as there's a single point of contact at the school level, that person can reorder as soon as supplies start to diminish. And so that way there's a regular flow of supplies throughout the year. We expect the first shipment landed, all the masks should be there, but the first shipment of the other materials landed at our first schools late last week. We expect that the schools that are opening over the next week or so will start to get theirs in the next 2 or 3 days. But by Friday, we think it'll be ready. There will be a public dashboard that shows every school and the status of the delivery of each of the shipments. So that should help folks to be able to track when things are coming and when they've arrived.
Great. I'll just publicly, I just want to say thank you for your passionate and knowledgeable leadership through this time. It cannot be easy to lead this state through this time, but I'm thankful for it and appreciate all you've done in your office and the support that you've given us. And just keep up the great work. I'm going to give it back to County Executive Haley. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Director. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
And to mimic what Mr. Swallows said, Commissioner, we do thank you for your leadership and your ability to set the pace for us to follow on a local level. It's going to be an ever-changing challenge every day, every single day, not knowing what is next. But I didn't know if you wanted to just do a few closing words of encouragement for teachers, for parents, for our school board members, education associations, and most of all, our children, many of whom are starting school for the very first time in kindergarten. Just some closing words of encouragement.
Absolutely. So I always like to say I'm kind of the mommy commissioner. I've got so when we're making decisions and thinking about this school year, I'm doing so as commissioner, but also as a mom of 3 young kids. And so for those kindergartners out there who are starting their very, very first day of school, just know my little Abby's in kindergarten, and she started her first day of school today. And the best thing that I could find to say to her is the same thing I'll say to you, which is read, love learning, and keep a smile on your face. And if you can do those 3 things, kindergarten's going to be the best year ever. And so I would just encourage them to just soak up every single second and know that this is the best year because it is the year they learn to read. And when you can read, you can do anything. I've got a 3rd grader in an elementary school. So for those elementary school kiddos and teachers out there, I know that it's going to look a little different lining up and sitting in chairs, and circle time and reading tables and carpet time all are going to look different, but it's because it's super, super special this year. And they get to be the pioneers or the explorers or the adventurers for years to come on what is possible and how you can still use your brain even if you're sitting a little farther apart. And to our teachers out there, hang in there. You are some of the most important people that we have in the state right now, and you are providing a tremendous amount of leadership to our communities, to our families, and to our state, and in many respects to our country. One of the great opportunities that we've had as a state is to showcase your work and the work of our districts to Congress and to other states who are clamoring for the kind of leadership that you all are showing as educators. And there's nothing that I could be more proud of than the work that you're doing. And then to our middle and high school students, you all are quite independent now, and know how this works. And so we are counting on you to continue to model and show what it means to be the incredible learners that you are, to continue to move on your pathways towards your dreams, and that we are incredibly excited to see what's to come, and just very, very proud of you. And then, as the director said, our leadership at the county and at the city level has been tremendous, and so I do want to close by thanking all of you on this call. You all are leading your communities in very, very difficult, tumultuous waters, and you're doing so beautifully and with the people and folks who you live with and go to church with and go to the store with, front of mind and heart. And I'm just very grateful for that. It makes my job just that much easier because I know how much you love and care about your community. So thank you for that.
Well, I always say that children are our most precious resource. An investment in them, it is investment for a better tomorrow for all of us. And if we don't build schools, we're going to have to build jails instead. So we thank you for your leadership. And I want to leave us all with a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in." So with that being said, we thank you for your leadership, Commissioner. You be careful, be safe, and we will continue our conversation and dialogue as this new school year continues. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
So we want to thank Commissioner Schwinn for joining us today. We're going to welcome back to the podium Mr. Grant Swallows, our Director of Schools, to give us an update on the school system and the reopening and what's going to evolve in the next week or so for protecting our students and teachers and welcoming everyone back to the classroom again. So, Mr. Swallows.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to be here this morning to update you, our citizens, about school reopening. As County Executive Haley said, our plan is continuing as it has been. We announced that in late June to return on our school calendar on August the 12th. We will go in a hybrid model to where we can get our students in groups, in smaller groups. A through L will be in the traditional learning environment on typically Mondays and Wednesdays. They'll be learning in the remote environment on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Students with the last names that begin M through Z would be the reverse, and the opposite. They will be learning in the traditional learning environment on Tuesdays and Thursdays, in the remote environment on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We'll do that for 2.5 weeks to give us the opportunity to implement safety procedures, safety protocols, and to make sure that we are giving our students and our teachers the best opportunity to be successful in an environment that's going to be very different than what they're used to. Students are going to encounter safety checks. They'll have their temperatures taken. They will be encountering social distancing. We are working really hard as a school district to provide opportunities for our students to learn in the classroom while distanced, also in cafeterias and common areas, staying as distant as possible. We know that to be effective based on the recommendation that we're receiving from our medical experts, and so we're working really hard to do that. Additionally, we have received a mandate from our board to make sure that students and teachers are wearing masks. We released that policy late last week, and we're working hard to make sure that our students and our staff stay safe by wearing masks, but also understanding that students and teachers are going to need a break from that mask throughout the day. So again, the general rule there is going to be 6 feet. If we can get outside that 6 foot bubble, then we're going to give our students and teachers the opportunity to have a rest from that mask. But at the same time, when we're in our learning opportunities, our common areas, we are going to make sure that students and staff are wearing those masks. We released a comprehensive document detailing all of these plans on Friday of last week. I would encourage you to go to our website, warrenschools.com. That is available there. It's also available on all of our social media platforms. You can find lots and lots of information, including what happens if a student or a staff member tests positive, our protocols for that, our cleaning protocols, our attendance protocols, technology information, all those different things are in that document. I also did a Facebook Live session yesterday where I answered a number of questions from the community that were submitted beforehand. But that is also available on our Warren County Schools page on Facebook. That is still there. I would encourage you, if you have questions, to look through that, watch that. And if you have additional questions, I would like to ask that you reach out to us. You can reach out to your schools. They will also be giving information this week around their individual school plans on what students can expect when they come back on the 12th and on the 13th in regard to temperature checks and screening and distancing and all the different things that go into that. Also, one important thing is that I want you to know that regardless, it's a fairly divisive issue going back to school. We have some that are ready to go back to school. They want to go back to school, but we have others that are concerned. And so I want to speak to both of those groups. The ones that are coming back to school that have chose the traditional path, we're expecting a great year. But along with great year comes some responsibility. Responsibility of distancing when asked and when told. Responsibility of masks when asked and when told. Responsibilities of good hygiene and taking care of ourselves, because that's the only way that we can continue to function effectively as a school system. And so I'm asking those families and those students that are preparing to come back to us in the traditional environment to have conversations leading up to August the 12th to make sure we are prepared for that. We also understand that there are students that are at risk health-wise, or they're also living with a family member that might be at risk. And so we have offered as a school district an opportunity for students in that situation to learn in the remote environment through our VIP at Home program. I want to caution you as you watch this today, the deadline for that program is this afternoon at 4 o'clock. That application is on our website as well. It's available on our social media platforms. I would encourage you, if you would like to choose that option, please go fill out that application. There is information about the VIP program in that same document I referenced with our comprehensive plan, but that offers students that are at risk or families that are at risk an option for them to learn at home. We're asking the students in that environment to make a 9-week commitment, because as a school district, we have to make several decisions related to staffing when students learn in that environment. And I'll finish with this. As we go back to school next week, on my Facebook Live session yesterday, I asked for a couple of things. One is flexibility. Our teachers are working extremely hard. Our staff is working extremely hard to prepare for a great school year. But they're being asked to do things that they've never done before. They're being asked to do things in a different way than they've ever done it before. So I'm going to ask for your flexibility. Help us. Help us to learn together. Help us to serve our students in the best way. And lastly, the thing I'll ask for is a little bit of grace. We're all in this together. We're all working for the same thing, to work for our students, to educate them. As a school system, we educate them. We provide for them socially. We provide for them emotionally. We provide meals for them. We have people that provide clothes when students are in need. We have people that provide jackets when students are in need. As we talked about, we're about educating the whole child. Please bear with us. Give us a little bit of grace as we work together for the members of for our students in Warren County. At this time, I appreciate your time. I'm going to ask Nolan from the city of McMinnville to come up and give us his updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swallows and Mr. Haley and Commissioner Schwinn. I'm Nolan Meng, City Administrator with the City of McMinnville. And at the city, we continue to heed the guidance and recommendations of our federal, state, and local public health officials. Effective Monday, July 20th, the following changes in our operations were implemented and remain in effect in response to our escalating positive case numbers and rate of positivity. Face coverings are required for all city employees, elected officials, contractors, and citizens who enter city facilities. Anyone entering a city facility is required to have their temperature taken and must answer our questions successfully prior to entering. The fire department lobbies are closed. The police department lobby is closed. The Bell Street lobby is closed to walk-ins, but a walk-up window is available to accept all payments and other transactions. Utility bills, as always, can also be paid online at our website, mcminnvilletn.gov, by drop box at 101 East Main Street or 202 Bell Street, or at several banks throughout McMinnville that accept utility payments. The water and sewer plant and water maintenance, public works, street aid, animal control, urban forestry, and city garage lobbies are all closed. The community development department lobby is closed. Permits may be obtained over the phone, by email, or by scheduling an appointment in person as a last resort. The wellness center at the mall and all classes are closed. The Gilly Pool will remain open with a max number of 300 patrons at any given time. The Park Theater is closed to public events other than city meetings and city-related business such as municipal court. Public bathrooms, playgrounds, the skate park, tennis courts, and all ball fields remain open. The baseball and softball leagues will proceed as planned. All public meetings will continue in person and will be broadcast on Facebook and YouTube after. The public is welcome. Work continues on the Civic Center, which is about 79% complete, the dog park near Pepper Branch Park, remodeling for relocation of the administrative staff, community development, and police department offices to City Hall. The City Hall elevator, which is expected to be completed by early September, along with relocation of city staff back to City Hall. Smoke testing started yesterday in the Highway 70 basin. That continues this week. There's more information on that on Facebook, and if you have any questions, give us a call. Planning continues on the Magnus Drive Extension project. The Center Street sewer repair, which is expected to begin in August or September. Resurfacing and addition of bike lanes to Morrison Street from the high school to Main Street. That's expected to begin relatively soon, within the next month or two. Along those same lines, on Friday, we learned that we were selected for funding of a bicycle and pedestrian plan focused on connecting schools and neighborhoods with the 2020 TDOT Community Transportation Planning Grant Rural Planning Initiative. This program will provide us with resources to assist with planning efforts that define the transportation cohesiveness between multimodal transportation systems and local land use objectives that also achieve the statewide transportation goals. It will allow us also to aid with the creation of planning documents that support improvements in traffic flow, safety, and overall efficiency of the transportation system. Additionally, it will provide planning resources to achieve our community vision as it relates to transportation and land use needs that promote economic growth. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please contact us at 931-473-1200 or message us on Facebook. Thank you.
As a community, we face many challenges, but county mayors have been given broad authority under the governor's executive orders to take charge of local situations dealing with the COVID crisis. I've reissued my state of emergency and also my executive order for face mask wearing. The face mask is not a mandate, it is highly recommended. And so across the county, we're encouraging each and every one to do their part. County employees are required, people coming into our buildings are required to wear masks. We're encouraging also that everyone out in the public and large social gatherings also use masks. That's the way we combat this virus. That's the easiest way to return to normal. That's the easiest way to keep our schools open. It's a simple task. It's a simple request to wear a mask, wash your hands with good personal hygiene, social distance, and avoid large gatherings where you feel uncomfortable in, or avoid those social gatherings. So it is your place, it is your duty, it is your responsibility. We all realize what the consequences are going to be if we have to shut down the economy or we have to shut down schools again. And so we've got to worry about, and we have to keep forwarding our thoughts and prayers and uplift each and every person that is doing their part, whether it's a business, whether it's a church, whether it's a local organization, whether it's a government entity. We're all in this together. I understand your frustration. We all feel it. It's all around us. The COVID stress-related syndrome that's out there has people on edge. It's brought out the good in people, but it's also brought out some of the bad. And we're going to overlook that bad, and we're going to lift up those people who have done the right thing all along. We encourage people to be tolerant, to be patient, to do your responsible thing, whether you're standing in line or whether you're in a drive-through situation. Please be patient with each and every person that is trying to do their part. We must combat this with measures that we have in place, and it will continue to worsen if we don't. None of us want that. We're trying to remain positive and lift everyone up that is doing their part. There are exceptional things happening across our community, our schools, local government, providing agencies, feeding programs. We want to thank each and every volunteer, each and every person that's played a leadership role in developing and implementing those plans. I'm an optimist. I feel like this is going to give us an opportunity as a community to see what is good, what we can do to move forward, and what we need to do the next time we're faced with a crisis. It's time for everyone to pitch in, roll up your sleeves, and get the job done. We're not sure what next is coming from Washington or Nashville. As stimulus money keeps being directed our way, we're not sure how it's going to be used, what it's going to be directed for. We're not really sure about the unemployment compensation packages yet, but we will be well received in our community when those things do happen. But we have to have our plans in place. As we've done before, and I've asked you to do before, it's what we do best is working together as a team. That we have resilience during the best of times and even the worst of times. But we can do this. In the meantime, county services will continue. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the admin building is closed, but Tuesdays and Thursdays open to the public, but there are conditions. You must sign in, temperature checks, face masks are required. We're not allowing any large public meetings inside our facilities for the protection not only of the public, but also my county employees. The clerk's office and the trustee's office are back open again. Those Tuesdays and Thursdays dates will continue until we're faced with a crisis or we have further shutdowns. And so if you have any doubt whatsoever about an office or information that you need before showing up, please call that office number. You can call my office number at 473-2505 to get that direct line into an office, or you can look in the phone book or directory on our website for any of those pertinent numbers that will direct you toward the clerk's office or trustees or assessors. So please call those appropriate, and please be patient. This is no time to be impatient and intolerant of others that are trying to do their jobs. All it takes is one county employee to shut down a whole department, and we cannot afford for many departments to be shut down for 2 or 3 weeks waiting for test results or for people to recover. This is what we have to do in order to provide essential services. Testing at the health department is now available on an additional day. And so the Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays will still be to 9 to 11. We've added Thursdays from 3 to 5 p.m. to accommodate those folks who might be working and can't work it into their schedule to come by for testing. So please call the health department if you have questions about those testing dates. There is a lag in some of the reporting, which oftentimes makes some of our reports look smaller, but we do have more than 400 cases locally. We do have some people hospitalized, and we have to take action as a community in order to keep this virus from spreading further. The census has been backed up and it's been retracked, but census is still important that each and every person complete that form, complete that census application. Those numbers are important, particularly for federal funding and any additional monies that might be coming from Washington to the state. We have an election coming up on August 6th, a general election. So hopefully we're going to be able to conduct that without any glitches. But once again, we've taken every precaution to protect voters. Early voting ended Saturday with a fairly large turnout. We hope August 6th election date will as well, and county buildings will be closed that day. When we look at the special session for the General Assembly, we're not sure what's going to come from that. And so we'll hope that some liability protection for counties and school systems will come and some additional monies that may be directed our way. In the meantime, it's our responsibility, it's our duty, it's our due diligence to do everything that we can as a community and as elected officials and those people who participate in every process, either as volunteers or as workers, essential workers, first responders, my law enforcement that are out there trying to do the best job they can under these conditions. So we are all in this together, and we can do this together. We are volunteers. We are pioneers. Leave you with another quote from Abraham Lincoln. You can't escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. So Warren County, take care and be safe. We are Warren Strong. Thank you.